Would you believe me if I told you that Santa Claus and Uncle Sam were made by the same person? So I was standing in my kitchen this morning, toasting the best flavor of Pop-Tarts, brown sugar cinnamon, when I thought to myself, where in the world did Uncle Sam come from anyway? I mean, who actually thought of this guy in the first place? And because I had that thought, I immediately ran over to my computer and started researching a rabbit hole of Uncle Sam information. There's a lot of different conflicting stories about his origin, but today I think I could pretty much sum up what's happened to, the story of him, at least up until today. So to tell you the whole story about Uncle Sam, we actually have to go all the way back to the Napoleonic Wars, which started in 1799. And the Napoleonic Wars were a series of wars between France and Great Britain. And now we have to actually jump to almost the end of this war in 1812, where France had actually invaded Russia to try to get a big power grab because Napoleon knew that the war was kind of dying down. And this was his last real push to try to gain any sort of real land. And this would be his final mistake in the Napoleonic Wars because he would lose 500,000 men trying to invade Russia in only 6 months. And during the French invasion of Russia, Great Britain would actually see this as a great advantage to them to end the war once and for all. So they would start using this tactic that would later be known as impressment. And impressment is literally just the British Navy kidnapping you into their ranks. I'm not joking, that's literally what it is. They would go around and go to American merchant ships, and there would be these giant British warships with a bunch of cannons, and they would just, point all the cannons at these dudes and pick up the big megaphone and be like, hey, it would behoove you to join the British Navy. We have 3 of your boats worth of lead aimed and ready to shoot at you. We'll pay you, maybe. And as a side note to this, right after the British started kidnapping American merchants off their own ships, they had also started this thing called the Sixth Coalition with Prussia, Austria, Russia, and Sweden. And all of these countries were formed to try to defeat France once and for all. And this coalition was formed in 1813, and in 1815, France would finally be defeated and it would end the Napoleonic Wars. So we got really lucky that a certain German guy I know doesn't know a lot about the Napoleonic Wars because he pretty much did all the same exact shit that Napoleon did wrong. He got all the big kids mad at the playground, and all the big kids just started kicking sand in his face and telling him to just cool down, just chill out, dude. You are absolutely out of hand. But the only difference between Napoleon and Adolf is, Napoleon didn't really deserve it. He was just trying to make a new form of government that's actually pretty good. So to go back to the War of 1812, the whole reason why it started was because Great Britain just started stealing Americans for their own war. And so Americans were standing there and they were like, hey yo, didn't we settle this shit like 29 years ago? What's the big deal, dog? And the British were like, I do say, good sir, you're not even a country to this grand thing we call Britain. You keep yourself in line or we'll come over there and beat you up again. And America was like, what do you mean beat you up again? We literally kicked the shit out of you. You want us to do Revolutionary War 2 Electric Boogaloo? Alright, we'll get this shit on. And Britain was like, oh yes, I'll send 10 of my best ships. You stand no chance, sir. You ain't even gonna have a name tag. And America was like, bitch, get the fuck out of here. No refunds. Your warranty's expired.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
I love the young people.
So America and Great Britain can't get to a compromise, so we're gonna fight again, and this all starts with Great Britain sending a couple of their naval ships to attack the east coast of America. And in response, America would start sending more men, supplies, and munitions all to the east coast to combat the British. And while all this was happening, the government would realize that a lot of their men were getting really hungry on the front line. So now enter stage right, the meat mogul of New York, Sam Wilson. So Samuel Wilson is a meat packer from Troy, New York. And don't laugh, that's a real job, and it's still a real job. It's a very respected, high esteem, and colloquial job. They're everywhere, and you must respect your local meat packer, okay? But anyway, Sam Wilson was a meat packer in Troy, New York, and right after the War of 1812 started, the U.S. government came up to Sam and said, hey, yo, you're a meat packer, you got mountains of meat, we need you to pack meat for our boys. Our boys are hungry, they're getting quite famished down there. And Samuel Wilson came up and he said, "Hey, yo, sure there, bud. I'm the meat mogul in New York. I pack the best meat this side of the Mississippi. I will gladly sign a contract with the U.S. government." And that's how Sam Wilson started packing barrels full of meat and sending them off to the East Coast for the U.S. Navy to fight the British. And these barrels of meat, he would actually stamp on top of the barrels U.S., which was just, standard operation and still is to this day. And the U.S. stands for property of the U.S. government. And right here is where the origins of Uncle Sam's birth really do become a mystery. And now some reports say that the soldiers that got these barrels of meat with the U.S. stamp on top jokingly referred to the U.S. stamp as referring to Uncle Sam, not property of the U.S. government. And different reports say that in Troy, New York, Samuel Wilson had already had the nickname Uncle Sam for a while. So when these barrels of meat were sent to these soldiers, because he was already living in the East Coast and the soldiers were on the East Coast, some of the soldiers already knew who Samuel Wilson was. So when they saw the U.S. on top of the barrels, they literally thought it was from Uncle Sam, Samuel Wilson, because they knew the guy. So this is where the, reports get a little conflicting, because we're not really sure if his name really comes from Samuel Wilson, actually his nickname being Uncle Sam, or if it was just from people referring to the federal government as Uncle Sam. Kind of how people are like, "Hey, yo, Jack," or, a kind of John Doe situation where it's kind of just a catch-all name. And over the course of the next year, Sam Wilson would still continue to pack meat for the United States government, and the soldiers would still continue to refer to it as Uncle Sam's meat. And this would gain him so much notoriety that the local Troy paper would write an article about Sam Wilson and Uncle Sam's meat. And this is where Uncle Sam would actually gain national attention. And that's about it for Sam Wilson for now, because for the rest of the War of 1812, he would just pack meat for the United States government. And now we jump all the way to the 1860s during the Civil War, where a political cartoonist named Thomas Nast would actually be the first man to depict Uncle Sam with white hair and with his stars and stripes suit. And here's actually a picture of Thomas Nast's first depiction of Uncle Sam, so there you go. There's Uncle Sam at 1 day old, so if you're not as big, if your baby isn't this big when he was born, there's something wrong with him. Call the doctor. You don't have to. You're in the hospital. Call more doctors. And like I said in the beginning of the video, Thomas Nast, who created the original image of Uncle Sam as we know him today, he was also the first guy to make the modern image of Santa Claus and the modern depictions of the Republican and Democratic Party symbols. So this guy has literally created 4 of the most used and popular symbols, and it was hundreds of years ago, and we still use all of them to this day. It's very cool. Thomas Nast was an absolute gangster, a baller. He was doing one of these, when he was drawing Uncle Sam. He was doing. Oh wait, I'm not in frame. Here, wait 1 second. He was doing one of these, And after Thomas Nast would create the first depiction of Uncle Sam, multiple political cartoonists from other newspapers and journalist organizations would use the same depiction as imagery for the federal government. So now we jump another 50 years to July 6th, 1916, during World War I. Another political cartoonist named James Montgomery Flagg would be asked by Leslie's Weekly to make a front cover depiction of Uncle Sam. And in this new iteration of Uncle Sam, Flagg would give him a tall top hat, his blue striped coat, and he would have him pointing right towards the viewer of the image. And this is where the original creation of the modern depiction of Uncle Sam as we know him today came from. And the same man would actually be contracted by the Army to make the "I Want You for the Army" poster that is very infamous to this day. Well, not infamous, famous. I don't know the meanings of those 2 words. You have a dictionary or a thesaurus?
No.
And that poster wasn't just used for World War I. It's been used for World War II and practically every war since then. Even if it's not the original poster, there's usually some sort of iteration of it out there. And so in 1950, after World War II had ended, the United States would officially adopt Uncle Sam as one of their national symbols, just like the eagle or the Liberty statue from France or whatever the hell her name is, I don't know. And in 1961, Congress would officially recognize Samuel Wilson as the progenitor of America's national symbol, Uncle Sam. And Troy, New York, to this day, is still known as the home of Uncle Sam, which is pretty cool. This guy literally was packing meat for our boys 200 years ago, and we're still talking about him to this day. So, you know, shout out to Samuel Wilson if he's got an Instagram or a YouTube channel. I don't know. And as one final note to Uncle Sam's story, no one really knows the true origin of who actually started referring to the federal government as Uncle Sam first, because this whole story I told you about starts in 1812, but we actually have records of another person back in 1810 referring to him as Uncle Sam. And this person is a sailor known as Isaac Mayo, who was aboard the USS Wasp, who was going from a port in New York to a port in New Jersey. And during this, he would actually diary in his journal a record saying that he was very seasick during these 2 days of travel. And in one quote from the journal, it says, and I quote, "Oh, could I have only got on shore in the height of it. I swear that Uncle Sam, as they call him, would certainly forever have lost the services of at least one sailor," in reference to himself, pretty much saying that, you know, if he would have gotten on shore that day, he would have absolutely, you know, abandoned his mission because he didn't want to throw up anymore, you know, which pretty reasonable response. You know, I don't like throwing up on a boat either. Not that I've ever gotten seasick though, which is really weird. I get car sick all the time, but I've been on boats a lot because I live in New York, and a boat has never made me throw up in my life. It's hilarious. So, you know, me going like this, liquids in my ear are fine. Me going like this, you know, instantly fucked. And this proves that soldiers before the War of 1812 were already referring to the federal government as Uncle Sam as early as 1810. And in the quote, as I said before, the quote says, "I swear that Uncle Sam, as they call him." So since he said there, "as they call him," that pretty much means that, you know, after his first 2 days on this boat, all these other people on the ship are calling the federal government Uncle Sam, which means that all these other people on the boat have definitely been there way longer than Isaac's been there, because Isaac's only been there for 2 days. So no one really knows how old this goes back, because that means that, you know, the whole ship of the USS Wasp, or at least a good majority of it, was already calling the federal government Uncle Sam. So no one really knows the true date or the true person of, you know, the actual origin of who actually started calling the federal government Uncle Sam. And it's really funny because all the way back during the Revolutionary War, you know, really far back before this entire story started, when we, you know, first fought Britain, Americans actually referred to the federal government as Brother John. So it's somewhere between, you know, 1775 and 1810, or a little bit before 1810, somewhere around there, the federal government was referred to from Brother John to Uncle Sam. Maybe it turned into like Brother Sam, and then, or maybe it turned into like Uncle John, and then it turned into Uncle Sam. Like, I don't know what happened, but it's just really cool the way that language evolves with people in the same way, you know, culture and everything else does. Very interesting to me. So, you know, that's pretty much about it for Uncle Sam. So I want to thank you for watching till the end, and if you know, watch this long, it would be really cool if you liked and subscribed. It shows here that 99% of my audience isn't subscribed yet, so it'd be really cool if you're one of the cool lucky 1%ers that go down and hit the subscribe button. Because if you want to be in the 1% just like Bill Gates, you gotta subscribe to my YouTube channel, alright? Join the 1% club today. But other than that, I love you, and goodbye.
Formats, the ones that match the seats.
I have traveled 500 miles to give you this video. Please like and subscribe. And if you liked my video and subscribed, maybe leave a comment down below, you know?